Jace Verran knelt under the weight of a rusted gate, sweat sliding down his temple as he tightened the final bolt with a wrench that had seen better days. "Zara, baby, don't touch that, it's sharp," he called over his shoulder. His 6-year-old daughter stood in the shade of a large oak tree, her curly hair tied in 2 uneven pigtails, cradling a well-worn stuffed rabbit. "I'm just watching, Daddy." Jace offered her a tired smile, pushing himself up from the gravel driveway. His jeans were stained with oil, knees worn thin, and his boots were scuffed beyond repair. He didn't belong in neighborhoods like this, gated estates with fountains, marble columns, and security cameras tucked behind hedges, but a job was a job. And when you're raising a daughter alone, pride takes a backseat. The gate led to an enormous property that looked like it belonged in a movie. He hadn't seen the owner, only spoken to a woman on the phone named Lena, who said the gate was stuck and needed fixing. She didn't sound like the usual rich type's no clipped tone, no arrogance, just kind and oddly curious about him. He was tightening the last hinge when he heard the click of heels behind him. He straightened, wiping his hands on a rag from his back pocket, and turned to see a woman in a white blouse and dark jeans standing a few feet away, watching him. She was breathtaking. Long brown hair tied casually at the nape of her neck, eyes the color of honey, and a face that looked too gentle for the world she clearly lived in. She wasn't overdressed like you'd expect from someone in a house like that. There was something grounded about her, something real. "You're Jace?" she asked, folding her arms. He nodded. "That's me. Gate's all fixed, wasn't too bad, just needed new bolts and a little muscle." Her gaze flicked to his hands, rough and calloused, then back to his face. "I'm Lena," he blinked. "Wait, you're the owner." "Technically," she said, a small smile pulling at her lips. "My family built the place, I just moved back in." Jace looked between her and the house. "Didn't expect someone like you to be living here alone." "I'm not." "I have a dog," she said, then added, "He's terrible at conversation." Zara's bunny flopped to the ground as she ran up, clinging to Jace's leg. "Hi," she said shyly to Lena. Lena crouched down, her eyes lighting up. "Well, hello there, what's your name?" "Zara," she whispered. "That's a beautiful name. I'm Lena." Zara nodded, then tugged on Jace's sleeve. "Can we have ice cream now?" He glanced at Lena. "Sorry, she's been patient. We passed a truck on the way in." Lena straightened. "Actually, would you both stay? I was about to have lunch on the terrace." "There's plenty, and I make a mean strawberry sundae." Jace hesitated. He didn't like charity, and this definitely smelled like it, but Lena didn't look like she was pitying him. She just looked interested, warm, curious. "You sure?" he asked. "We don't mean to impose." "You're not." "I insist." Zara was already tugging him toward the house before he could say no. Jace chuckled under his breath. "Guess we're staying." The terrace overlooked manicured gardens and a pool so clean it shimmered. A long table was set with cold lemonade, fresh salads, and grilled chicken. Lena moved with ease, barefoot now, laughing with Zara as if they'd known each other for years. Jace kept glancing at her, trying to figure her out. She didn't act rich. She didn't flinch when Zara spilled lemonade, and she didn't look through him like he was just the hired help. "So," she said, finally sitting across from him, "you're a mechanic." Jace nodded. "Mostly, I take odd jobs. Whatever I can find, it pays the bills." "And your daughter, full-time, Dad," he said proudly. "Her mom left when she was 2. Haven't heard from her since." Lena's face softened. "That's a lot to carry," he shrugged. "Wouldn't trade it for anything." They ate under the sun, Zara giggling as Lena showed her how to make whipped cream peaks with a spoon, and Jace found himself laughing more than he had in months. He hadn't realized how lonely he'd been. How much he missed talking to someone who looked him in the eyes. As the afternoon faded, he stood to leave. "I should get her home. She's got school in the morning." Lena walked them to the gate, her bare feet brushing the stone path. "Thank you for fixing it." And "Thank you for staying," he nodded, unsure what to say. "You're not what I expected." She tilted her head. "What did you expect?" He thought about it. "Someone colder, distant, I don't know, rich." Lena smiled. "I'm all of those things, just not all the time." He laughed. "Well, thanks for lunch." She pulled something from her back pocket and handed it to him, an envelope. "Payment plus a little extra for the ice cream." He hesitated. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, not loud, not dramatic, just something. Good night, Jace. Good night, Lena. He walked away with Zara skipping beside him, the envelope tucked into his toolbox. He didn't open it until he got home, and when he did, his heart nearly stopped. Inside wasn't just cash, it was a check for $10,000. He stared at it, stunned. No one tipped like that. No one, unless they were insanely rich and maybe falling for the man fixing their broken gate. Jace hadn't meant to call her. His thumb hovered over the number she'd scribbled on the back of the check before he'd noticed the tiny note beside it. For emergencies. Or peach cobbler, whichever comes first. He'd laughed, then shoved it in a drawer, telling himself he'd never use it. But 3 days later, the radiator in his truck split open with a hiss of steam, and the last job he lined up ghosted him without warning. He'd spent the better part of the morning elbow-deep in grease while Zara colored on a paper bag beside him, humming softly to herself. By noon, he'd admitted defeat. He didn't ask for money. That would have gutted his pride. Instead, he asked if she knew anyone looking for mechanical work. That was it, just a lead. But Lena didn't give him a lead, she gave him an address. It was a private airstrip. Jace pulled up in a borrowed pickup, his own still out of commission. Zara sat in the backseat, reading aloud from a picture book she'd gotten from the school library, her voice soft and deliberate. When they reached the hangar, 2 men in Navy uniforms were waiting beside a sleek, gleaming jet that looked like it had never seen a single drop of rain. Lena stood in front of it, hair pinned up, talking to someone in a suit. When she spotted Jace, her expression shifted, surprised, then pleased. "You came," she said, walking over in heels that clicked against the concrete floor. "You said you needed someone to look at the hydraulics." "I did," she replied. "And I thought of the only person I trust around moving parts and small disasters." He raised an eyebrow. "You calling me a disaster? I'm saying you're very good with broken things." She turned to Zara. "Hi, sweetheart." Zara smiled but didn't say much. She was always quiet around new places, watchful, like she was trying to determine if the world would be kind or cruel. Lena leaned down. "We've got a guest lounge inside. There's puzzles, movies, and a chocolate fridge." Zara's eyes lit up. "A chocolate fridge, strictly top secret," Lena whispered. "Only the bravest are allowed." Jace hesitated, but Lena waved over a woman in a gray blazer who knelt beside Zara and introduced herself as Claire, the on-site staff manager. She offered her hand like Zara was a visiting queen. "Go ahead," Jace said finally. "I'll be right here." Once Zara and Claire disappeared inside, Lena turned to him. "You're not going to tell me how bad it is, are you?" she asked, nodding toward the jet. "I'll let you know after I crawl under it and nearly break my back," she laughed. "Sounds promising." Jace slid beneath the undercarriage, flashlight in one hand, tools in the other. The jet was pristine, of course it was, but whoever last serviced it had missed a cracked line in the hydraulic system. It wasn't urgent yet, but it would be soon. He stood and dusted off his hands. "You fly often," weakly, she said. "Sometimes more." "Where to?" "Paris last week. Tokyo the week before that. Tomorrow, Prague." He stared at her. "That's not just rich, that's whatever comes after rich." She didn't deny it, so why the gate? He asked. "Why a house like that if you're never in it?" Her face shifted, just slightly. "It used to be my mother's. She passed recently." Jace paused. "I'm sorry." "She left it to me, along with half the company." He frowned. "What company?" "Verran Holdings." He went still. The name rang like a bell. Real estate, shipping, tech investments, one of the largest private firms in the country. He'd seen it in headlines, usually next to words like record-breaking acquisition or billion-dollar merger. He looked at her again, really looked. "You're that Verran," she nodded. "Lena Verran, guilty." He stepped back, shaking his head slowly. "That's a lot to drop on someone fixing your landing gear. I figured I'd ease you into it." "You own jets, Lena. I only own 5. He laughed despite himself. "That's supposed to make me feel better." She leaned against the wing, arms crossed. "Does it bother you?" "What? That I didn't tell you sooner?" He studied her face. "No, just makes me wonder why you didn't." "I liked the way you looked at me," she said quietly. "Not because of my family's name or the money, like I was just someone. You still are." Her expression flickered. "Most people don't think that." "I'm not most people." They stood there, the silence stretching between them, taut and full of something neither of them could name yet. Finally, she spoke again. "There's a charity gala next week. I'm hosting, Black tie, overpriced wine, lots of cameras. I need someone to make sure the classic cars on display don't leak oil on the marble floor. He raised an eyebrow. You're asking me to babysit fancy cars. I'm asking you to come, she said. With Zara, if you'd like, there'll be a magician. Do I have to wear a tux? Only if you want to match the champagne tower, he exhaled slowly. I'll think about it, her voice softened. Please do. As he walked back to the lounge to get Zara, he heard her voice again, lower this time, almost to herself. I don't need another suit in my life, I need real. He didn't turn around, but he heard it, and he felt it. By the time he reached the truck, Zara was beaming, holding a napkin-wrapped brownie like it was treasure. Daddy, this place has gold forks. Jace glanced in the rearview mirror, watching the hangar fade behind them. So did she, her tiny voice curious. Is she a princess? He hesitated. No, he said. She's something else. Jace adjusted the stiff collar of the rented tuxedo, trying not to choke on the knot of his tie. He stood in front of the towering glass doors of the Revel Grand Hotel, Zara's small hand tightly clutching his. She wore a pale blue dress that sparkled faintly under the lights, her eyes wide as they took in the valet line, filled with luxury cars and guests stepping out in gowns that shimmered like water. Are you nervous? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Little bit, he admitted, scanning the entrance where photographers waited behind velvet ropes. Nope, there's supposed to be a magician with a real dove, Jace let out a breath. Then we'll be fine. Inside, the ballroom looked like something out of a dream. Crystal chandeliers hung low over tables draped in white silk, each centerpiece a cloud of orchids and pale roses. A string quartet played near the back, barely noticeable over the low hum of laughter and clinking glasses. Waiters weaved through the crowd with silver trays of hors d'oeuvres that Jace couldn't even name. He kept his hand on Zara's shoulder as they moved through the throng of guests, most of whom didn't seem to notice him, until Lena appeared. She descended the marble staircase like she'd been born to it, her gown the color of midnight, her hair swept back in soft waves. But it wasn't the dress or the diamonds at her ears that made Jace forget how to breathe. It was the way her eyes lit up the moment she saw them. You made it, she said, reaching for Zara first, brushing a kiss over her cheek. You look like a star, Zara beamed. There's a magician, he has a hat. Lena laughed and turned to Jace. And you clean up dangerously well. I feel like an imposter, he muttered, tugging at his collar again. Good, so do I. Before he could respond, a tall man in a navy suit approached, holding 2 glasses of champagne. Lena, he said smoothly, your speech was perfect. The board's already talking about expanding the foundation. She accepted the glass with a polite nod. Thank you, Marcus. This is Jace and his daughter, Zara. Marcus's smile faltered for a beat. Of course, the mechanic. Jace kept his face neutral, but his jaw tightened slightly. Lena's voice didn't waver. Yes. The one who saved my plane from a very expensive disaster. Marcus glanced at Zara, whose attention was locked on a passing waiter with a tray of tiny parfaits. Well, enjoy the evening. Once he walked away, Lena turned to Jace. He's harmless. Just full of himself. I've seen worse, Jace replied, but thanks for the heads up. You're not just here for the cars, she said, her tone shifting. I wanted you to see this part of my world. He looked around the room at the chandeliers and champagne, the people moving like they'd rehearsed it. It's beautiful. But it doesn't feel real. It rarely does. She gestured for him to follow, leading him through a side hallway lined with black and white photos of past galas. They stopped beside a large wooden door, and she pushed it open to reveal a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The air was cooler here, the distant lights of downtown flickering like stars. This is the part I like, Lena said, leaning on the railing. No noise, no cameras. Jace stepped beside her, the sounds of the gala fading into a distant murmur. You're not like them, he said. Not sure they'd agree. He studied her profile. Why me? She turned to him, brows furrowing slightly. What do you mean? There are people in there who probably own islands. I fix things with duct tape. I wear boots until they fall apart. Why would someone like you look twice at someone like me? Her answer came without hesitation. Because you don't care who I am. You don't want anything from me. And when you look at me, it's not through a lens of what I'm worth. It's just me. Jace didn't say anything at first. Then quietly, that scares me. Why? Because I don't know what this is, or how to fit into it without feeling like a fraud. Lena stepped closer. You fit into my life the moment you showed up with your daughter and fixed something I couldn't. And it wasn't just the gate. He looked at her, his chest tightening. Before he could speak, a voice called from the doorway. Daddy. The magician made his tie disappear. Jace turned to see Zara bouncing on her toes, her cheeks flushed with excitement. Lena smiled. You should go see, he nodded slowly. You coming? I'll be there in a minute. Back in the ballroom, the magician had gathered a small crowd of children near the stage. Jace stood at the edge, watching Zara clap and laugh, her eyes shining under the warm lights. For a moment, he let himself breathe. When Lena returned, she slipped in beside him, her arm brushing his. Did you ever imagine yourself here? She asked. Not once. And now, he looked down at her, the noise of the room blurring into the background. I'm starting to. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. By the end of the night, when the final toast was made and the band struck up the last song, Lena reached for his hand under the table. Not for show, not for anyone else, just for him. Jace hadn't planned to see Lena again so soon, especially not like this. It was just after sunrise when his phone rang a number he didn't recognize. He'd been packing Zara's lunch for school, half asleep, peanut butter on his fingers. The voice on the other end was brisk. Mr. Verran. Miss Verran asked me to call you. She's in the hospital. He dropped the knife. What happened? She collapsed at a board meeting. Exhaustion, they think. She was asking for you. The second he got Zara to school after a rushed explanation to the teacher and a promise to be back before pickup, he drove straight to St. Leora's medical center. When he arrived, the woman at the reception desk didn't blink when he gave his name. She simply handed him a visitor badge and pointed down a polished hallway. The whole floor was too quiet, filled with muted beeps and soft footsteps that echoed off white walls. He found her alone in a private room, the blinds drawn halfway. Lena lay on the bed, Roman 4 in her arm, her hair loose over the pillow. She looked pale but alert, and annoyed. I told them it was just low blood sugar, she said the moment he stepped in, her voice raspier than usual. But apparently, if you faint in a room full of executives, they call code red. Jace moved closer, pulling the chair beside the bed. They said you asked for me. I did. You could have called someone else. I didn't want anyone else. He sat slowly, studying her face. You scared the hell out of me. I scared myself, she admitted. I haven't slept more than 3 hours in weeks. I thought I could push through. You always push through. This time I pushed too far. There was a pause before she added, they ran tests. It's nothing serious. But the doctor said if I don't start slowing down, it could become something serious. Jace leaned back, arms crossed. So what now? I don't know, she said, looking toward the window. I haven't known what I'm doing for months. He waited. I've been running the company since my mother passed. Everyone expects me to have answers, but I'm barely holding it together. I didn't even want to inherit it. I just didn't want to let it fall apart. You could walk away, Jace said. You've got enough money to never work again. That's not the point. If I walk away, I lose the last thing that tied me to her. She built it from nothing. Walking away feels like erasing her. He nodded once. Then don't walk away, but stop killing yourself to prove something to people who only see you as a last name. Lena looked at him, her expression unreadable. Why do you always know what to say? I don't. I just say what I'd want to hear if I were you. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Jace, I can't do this alone anymore. You're not alone. I mean it. I don't want to be strong all the time. I don't want to pretend I'm fine 24 hours a day. I don't want to be with someone who only wants the version of me that fits on a magazine cover. His voice was low. You think I want that version? I think you're the first person who never asked me to be anything but real. He reached out and took her hand, calloused fingers wrapping around hers gently. Then let's be real, starting now. She blinked rapidly, eyes shining. What does that even look like? He half grinned. Well, I start by driving you home when they let you out. Then I make you something edible, probably pasta. You sit on the couch and do absolutely nothing while Zara forces you to rank her top 10 storybooks. And tomorrow, you decide if the company still needs you or if there's a way to run it without letting it run you. She exhaled slowly. That's the best plan I've heard in months. Later that afternoon, after the doctor cleared her for discharge, he brought her home. Not to the mansion, he took her to his place. It was small. One bedroom, a fold-out couch, a kitchen with mismatched plates. But it was quiet and warm, and when Zara came running through the door and threw her arms around Lena like she'd been gone for weeks, Lena's eyes filled again. "Do you want to see my fairy garden?" Zara asked, tugging her hand. "Absolutely." Jace leaned against the doorway, watching them disappear down the hall. That night, after Zara had drifted off watching a cartoon marathon, Lena sat on the couch in an oversized hoodie, her bare feet tucked under her. Jace handed her a bowl of overcooked pasta. She took it with both hands and smiled. "This is terrible. I warned you. You did." "And yet I still said yes." He sat beside her, their knees touching. The moment stretched, softer somehow, like the air had shifted between them. She turned to him. "I used to think love came with conditions, expectations, power balances." Her voice lowered. "But this, you and Zara. You feel like home." He reached up slowly, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "And you feel like the part I didn't realize was missing." She leaned in first. The kiss was gentle, unhurried, full of everything unspoken between them. It wasn't a spark, it was a slow, burning flame, steady and certain. When they pulled back, she rested her forehead against his. "Stay," he said quietly. "I wasn't planning on going anywhere." 3 weeks later, Lena stood on a small stage in front of the newly launched community center she'd funded in her mother's name. Reporters clicked their cameras, but she didn't care about the flash. She looked straight at Jace, standing in the front row with Zara on his hip, both of them beaming. After the ribbon fell, she stepped down and walked straight into Jace's arms. "I'm not just here to make speeches," she whispered. "I'm here to build something." "With you?" "Then let's build it." A month after that, on a quiet beach an hour outside the city, surrounded by only a handful of close friends and one very delighted little girl tossing petals into the wind, Lena Verran married the mechanic who once tightened bolts on her broken gate. And when he kissed her under the setting sun, with the waves brushing their feet and Zara dancing barefoot in the sand, there wasn't a single piece of her life that felt incomplete. Not anymore. The rain fell in a soft hush outside the glass windows of the lakeside cottage, the kind of early spring drizzle that blurred the treetops and made the world feel quiet and slow. Inside, the fire crackled low in the stone hearth, casting a golden glow across the room where Lena sat curled up with Zara on the couch. Both of them focused intently on a jigsaw puzzle halfway complete across the coffee table. Jace stepped in from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel and leaned against the doorway. "You're both going to turn into puzzle pieces if you don't take a break." Zara didn't look up. "We have 3 corners left." Lena glanced at him, her expression playful. "She's a ruthless strategist. I'm afraid to stop." "Then I'll have to intervene with snacks," he said, setting down a plate of apple slices and cheddar. Zara reached for a slice without breaking her concentration. "You're a good cook now." Jace raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean now? You used to be terrible at pasta." Lena laughed and pulled Zara into her side. "She's not wrong." He shook his head and crossed the room, settling on the other side of the couch. The quiet between them was easy now, full of shared mornings and bedtime stories and the kind of love that didn't need proving anymore. Lena set down a puzzle piece and leaned back, her voice softer. "I spoke to the board this morning." Jace looked over. "How'd it go?" "I stepped down as CEO." Zara looked up. "What's a CEO?" "Someone who works too much," Lena said with a grin. "I'm still part of the company, but I'm not running it anymore." Jace's brow lifted. "You really did it." "I did," she said, reaching for his hand. "Because I meant what I said. I want a life that feels like mine, not one that was handed to me." He laced his fingers through hers. "I'm proud of you." She tilted her head. "I've been thinking about something else too." He waited. "I want to start over. Not just leave the old life behind, but build something new. Something that belongs to us. I want to open a restoration garage, classic cars, vintage bikes. A place where people actually care about the work being done. I want it to be ours." Jace froze, stunned. "You want to open a garage with me?" She nodded. "You have the skill, I have the funding, we'd be partners. Equal ones, and I want Zara to grow up seeing that." He didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, his mouth curved. "You're serious?" I've already bought the building. You what? It used to be my grandfather's service station before my mother turned it into storage. It's been empty for years. I went to see it last week. It still smells like engine grease and pine. Jace dropped his head back on the cushion and laughed. You're incredible. She leaned over and kissed his jaw. So are you. Zara clapped her hands suddenly. Can I paint a sign for it? With sparkles, Jace nodded. Only if it has a dragon and a wrench, Lena added, and a crown. Zara's eyes lit up. A dragon wearing a crown and holding a wrench, Jace chuckled. That's our logo. The next few weeks passed in a blur of sawdust and paint, insurance paperwork, and city permits. The station was cleaned out, the old lifts repaired, and the front office turned into a bright, welcoming space with a corner just for Zara books, crayons, and her own desk with a nameplate that read Junior Boss. Lena handled the business side with surprising ease, negotiating tool orders while wearing work boots and a ponytail. Jace managed the floor, his hands in engines and gearboxes, his smile broader than it had been in years. They named it Verran & Co. Restorations, and underneath the brass plate on the door, they added a smaller one in Zara's handwriting that read, Where magic gets fixed. On opening day, the line of visitors stretched around the block. Not because they were curious about the billionaire who walked away from boardrooms, but because word had gotten out that the shop was honest, the work exceptional, and the energy real. That evening, after the last customer left and the garage doors were rolled shut, Jace pulled Lena against him in the soft twilight. You did this, he said. We did. He brushed his lips against her temple. I want to ask you something. She looked up. If the answer's yes, you don't have to. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small ring box, flipping it open to reveal a simple gold band set with a single square cut diamond. You deserve something quiet, something real. Something forever. Her eyes filled as she took the ring and slid it on herself. Then you'd better marry me before I change the locks on the garage. They were married in the back garden of the cottage with only 10 guests, bare feet in the grass, and vows whispered under a canopy of fairy lights. Zara stood between them, holding both their hands, her dress covered in glitter and paint from last-minute sign-making. As they kissed, she shouted, Yay, now we're an official team. Later, Jace and Lena danced barefoot on the porch, the record player humming low behind them. No cameras. No headlines, just the two of them, her cheek against his chest and the sound of Zara giggling in the kitchen with their neighbor who had brought over too many cupcakes. I didn't think I'd ever have this, Lena whispered. What? Peace, a home. Someone who loves me for all of it. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. You have it. You always will. Outside, the rain had stopped. The moon rose silver and full above the trees, casting long shadows across the freshly painted sign hanging on the side of the garage. Inside, the lights stayed on long after midnight, and the love they built quiet, fierce, and lasting never dimmed again.